Jai Sri Radhe. European scholars enjoy a big reputation for a progressive outlook because of the big strides they have made in fields like medicine and physics. But that should not blind us to the fact that in other fields such as history, culture, and religion, their conclusions must be subjected to the strictest scrutiny. In my earlier episodes, I have already discussed how Alexander Cunningham was appointed as the first archaeological chief under the British Indian administration, specifically to create the monstrous myth of Islamic architecture and transfer all Hindu architectural credit to a nil Muslim account. The result is that the world has been burdened with a formidable pile of literature singing the paeans of a non-existent Islamic alias Saracenic architecture. Muslims have only scribbled Quranic lettering on pre-Islamic buildings. The geometrical patterns decorating those buildings are all pre-Muslim. After all, Islam is not even 1400 years old. And Islam took 600 to 700 years to acquire wealth and power enough to erect any buildings. All spectacular historical buildings from Bharat to Arabia and Spain ascribed to Muslims are pre-Muslim captured property. Yet, Western scholars, blissfully unaware or unmindful of Cunningham's fraud, continue to wax eloquent over a so-called Islamic architecture. For instance, Harvard University's Department of Architecture has a so-called program of Islamic architecture, or whatever that means, munificently funded by a partisan Aga Khan. Truly, it is said, money makes the mayor go, and there goes the mayor of Harvard, holding hollow, misleading seminars on subjects like, for example, Akbar as the founder of Fatehpur Sikri, following the scent of the Aga Khan carrot. An Australian university history department which mindlessly employed some Muslim professors from Aligarh were similarly taken for a ride by those Muslim professors. They persuaded the ignoramic Australian to sanction a tidy sum. The Australian professors were then newsled by those Aligarh professors to Fatehpur Sikri, and together they brought out a nondescript book vaguely ascribing the founding of Fatehpur Sikri to Akbar. Any genuine scholar would be ashamed of that book because it only repeated the vague traditional partisan Muslim bluffs ascribing the origin of Fatehpur Sikri to Akbar, while deliberately avoiding to take cognizance of the evidence marshalled in many authentic historical books. For example, a book titled Fatehpur Sikri is a Hindu city, written by Dr. P.N. Oak, published about 30 years ago under the pen name Hansraj Bhatia. So, all my viewers must therefore be very cautious in accepting what Muslims write about Islam or Christians write about Christianity, because with Islam and Christianity having been imposed with terror and torture, Muslim and Christian souls are chained to their respective dogmas. Therefore, the voice of a Christian and Muslim dissidents is drowned by hordes of fundamentalists. So it is not generally known that in Europe, hundreds of books have been written during the last 200 years questioning the existence of Jesus Christ. The BBC London also televised two debates in 1986 AD on whether Jesus Christ is an imaginary prophet. More and more European and American Christians are coming forward to admit that there never lived any person called Jesus Christ. William Durant's 10-volume work titled, quote, The Story of Civilization, unquote, gives a good summary of how more and more European scholars have come forward to question, silently or openly, the existence of Jesus And yet, William Durant himself, paradoxically and mindlessly, seems to believe in the Jesus story. Strange. Another such author is an American, Sinclair H. Lewis, who, in his several books on Jesus, gives important clues which detract from the Jesus story, and yet somehow he believes in a Jesus as a historical person. For instance, Lewis tells us that the statue of a holy child used to be set up and worshipped even before Christ, and that Xmas also used to be celebrated before Christ. You see the illusion of Christianity? Thus, European Christian intelligentsia seems to develop a split schizophrenic personality when touching upon Jesus and the Christian dogma consciously. Western scholars are unable to endorse or defend the mythical life of Jesus and the Christian dogma that goes with it. Therefore, they prefer to remain unconscious about it. They take Christianity to be a fashionable theological label, not to be taken too seriously or probed too deeply. It is there that one comes across the hypocrisy of the average Christian mind. The colossal vested interest that shelter under the Christian dogma, from the papacy in Rome to the Christian seminaries working in remote parts of the world, entrapping aborigines in the Christian flock, would all be reduced to rubble, and the big Bible cells will grind to a halt. Therefore, the Christ myth is being solicitously propped up by the average Westerner, but any dispassionate observer can detect that the entire Jesus story is a concoction from beginning to end. Take for instance the computation of BC and AD. Jesus is supposed to have been born on the first day of 1 AD. But as is well known, Jesus' birthday is celebrated all over the world on the 25th December. That means to say Jesus was born either 1 week BC or 51 weeks AD, depending on which January 1 begins the count. Is this not mathematical proof that no Jesus was ever born? Because had he been really born, the computation of AD should have begun from his actual birthday. Now look at another proof. Christians admit that Jesus was not born at the stroke of midnight. That means that even his birth time is unknown. The third proof is that he was not born on December 25th. Christians admit this. The traditional description says that Jesus was born when sheep were grazing in the fields. Scholars point out that on December 25th, it is so cold in Bethlehem and in Nazareth, etc., that no sheep graze during that season, and certainly not at midnight. The fourth proof is that even the year of Jesus' birth is unknown. It is speculated that Jesus was born anywhere between 68 BC to 4 BC, and nowhere near 1 AD. The fifth proof is that even the day of Jesus' birth is unknown, namely whether he was born on a Monday or Tuesday or any other day of the week. Jesus' birth place is also unknown. Some say it is Nazareth, while others assert that it is in Bethlehem. Jesus' home address is also unknown. If he was so famous that thousands used to flock to him, where did Jesus live? The sixth proof is that there is no original sketch, portrait, or caricature of Jesus either. Two Western scholars, namely Ernest Kissingerand and Elizabeth Seymour, found to their great shock that Christ's portrait was fabricated from that of Alexander the Great Idiot or that of the pagan sun god. And yet, researchers like William Durant and Sinclair Lewis continue to cling to Christianity. Amazing. Even the philosophy of Christianity is all a curious medley. If Jesus was the Son of God, why was he so helpless as to be crucified on a trumped up charge. And how does the blood of such a person, spilled involuntarily, redeem all the sins of generations to come? The innocent, non-thinking multitudes who are led like dumb sheep to the Christian altar every Sunday may be excused for their ignorance or dumb belief in Christian dogma. But why should other enlightened scholars distinguishing themselves in various fields of learning also pay lip service to Christianity? $1 million question? Cannot they realize that all so-called early saints such as Peter and Paul and Januarius were all mercilessly done to death by the administration because they were terrorists who were inciting the people to revolt in the name of a baseless new term of faith? Luckily, for persons like Peter and Paul, Roman Emperor Constantine too joined their ranks around 312 AD to become the prince of terrorists. He quickly decreed some bogus spots as places where the mythical Jesus was born, crucified, and buried. That started Christianity on the high road to be imposed on the whole of Europe with imperial might. Thus, sincere student of history should be able to see how Jesus is a non-person and Christianity a non-religion. Some conscientious individuals have renounced Christianity on ruminating over the details mentioned in many authentic history books. They have thereby set a shining example of how history can be of practical value in shaping one's life, instead of being regarded as an empty, pedantic subject. Thank you very much for watching this video. Jai Shri Radhe.